So, our first stop on this educational journey is going to be our philosophy of education. And a philosophy of education is going to be like a fingerprint. It's going to be different for each educator in subtle ways. We're going to have some of the same structures across different educators. So, the first question you want to answer is what is going to be in your philosophy of education? The assignment for this course has clear requirements. You're going to adapt this, however, to what you're going to be presenting to end, but we want to cover all the bases of everything that might need to be included in the philosophy in this assignment. So, the first part you want to include what is your personal background? Why do you want to be a teacher? What drew you to this field? For me, a lot of what drew me to it was I'm very passionate about math and science, and I like helping people see that they can do math and science, even though it's perceived to be very difficult. So that actually drew me to the teacher side of the STEM field and not to a practitioner side. Maybe there's a specific moment that you can point back to and you can say, that's the moment when I really knew that I needed to be a teacher. So if you have that moment, you can certainly include that, but not all of us have a seminal moment. There's generally, though, a thread that pulled us in this direction. You want to include your personal beliefs. Now, I know that this says personal beliefs, but you are going to need some citations for this. What are your beliefs and values about knowledge, society, and human nature? And how has the literature that you have read up to this point contributed to those beliefs? So for me, my personal beliefs are very aligned to understanding by design. I believe that when we're looking at knowledge, we have to first identify what knowledge we want to have for an outcome, and then we're going to work backwards from that outcome. I also have a lot of underlying ideas of access for education for our society as a whole, no matter what income you're in, and all those have been influenced, and I can point to specific writers, theorists, and whatnot that influence my thinking on those different things. Then, what is the purpose of education in our society? And this seems to be a question that shouldn't be difficult, but it is, right? So, what is our role as an education? Is our role to be the parent, the teacher, the disciplinarian? Is that our role to do everything? What is the purpose here? What, when we boil it down to the simplest form, is the purpose of the child's education? A lot of what I've included in mine is creating lifelong learners, which drives our economy because as people continue to pursue knowledge, they get better in their careers and it helps our economy grow. They grow and adapt with the society, so they grow and adapt and they increase the economy. How should learning be evaluated? This can be very highly personal for some people. So there are very strong feelings about standardized testing, portfolio assignments, things like that. But make sure you're backing this up with a theorist or with a reading or an article that influenced you. So sometimes it's almost like you're working this backwards and you're trying to say, well, I know what I believe, but in all the reading that you've done over the past several years, it's very hard to think, oh yeah, that one article, that was what put me on the thought train. So you're going to spend some time in the library trying to back up what you say. So if you say we shouldn't use standardized testing, that's okay. That's your philosophy, but back it up. And then how are these ideas reflected in your own practice? So if you're not currently practicing, you're not currently teaching, how do you think they would be reflected in your own practice? So you can't just tell me, I think we should do portfolio assessments and that be it. Well, what are you going to do in your classroom to help your students build these rich, unique portfolio assessments that are really going to show their educational growth from August to May? So that's what we're talking about with the purpose of education. Then there's the role of a teacher. So how do you view your role as a teacher in the classroom? What makes you important then in society? So that's two very different ideas. So in the classroom, are you a caretaker? Are you an instructor? Are you a teacher? Are you a disciplinarian? Or are you some combination of all of those things? And then take that out and broaden that horizon and say, well, why is it important for you to play that role for our society? How will you contribute to the formation of these students so that they can then contribute to society? And then think about what are the characteristics of the best teachers you had. That probably formed how you view the role as a teacher. And you can probably point back to some teachers that had significant experiences in your educational journey to say, well, this is when I really started thinking about the teacher having this role. Then you're going to think about the role of the learner or the student. So, what's the student's role in education? How responsible are they for the material? Do you perceive that students should be interested in learning for learning's sake? Do you think they should be extrinsically motivated? Do you think there should be some blending of things? Um, how does your role affect their role and their learning strategy? So we're going to see an interplay here. And then what is the role of the family? So in a perfect world, what role should the parents play in their kids' education? Obviously, we don't live in a perfect world, but we're going to say if we were in a perfect world and we could just order what we wanted, this would be what I see the role of the family as. And how would you include them in the education of their child? So some great examples are there's actually a lot of mobile apps teachers are using right now where they can give the students tokens for good behavior and it actually sends it to their parents' phone. They can upload photos, videos, and things going on in the classroom. So that's one example of including them in the education of their child, but not everybody has access to that technology. So maybe you're going to send home a weekly progress report, or maybe you're going to do something different. Be creative, give a citation. If you found something great that's not your idea, go ahead and cite it. So this is what I call the seminal part of your philosophy of education, because this is how you're going to match yourself to a workplace that you would be a positive influence in. Because when your vision and the workplace's vision don't align, that's when we start to have somewhat of a toxic environment for educators because you always feel chafed. You always feel like you're not fulfilling your role in its full glory and you're not being allowed to have certain freedoms. So, this process right here, these 3 points of your philosophy of education is going to have you sort of say, well, this is what I believe. And then, is this institution a good fit for me? Or am I a good fit for this institution? So this is really an opportunity to figure out what a good job placement is for you based on these ideas. So we have opinions versus research. This is not a paper of opinions. So a lot of what I talked about already covers this. You need to back up those opinions with research. So what came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, some people are going to say the egg, some people are going to say the chicken. So let's make sure we're backing it up because your opinion might have been formed before you did the research. That doesn't make your opinion invalid. Or your opinion might have been formed from reading the research, and it's going to evolve and grow. So don't think that this philosophy of education is going to be the same even a year from now. There's going to be things about this philosophy that are going to evolve and grow as you move throughout your career. Read. Do reading. That's how we grow as educators. We reflect, we read, we grow, we try new things. They work, they don't work. We reflect on what can we do better, and we grow from it. And also consider some cultural research for questions on the role of the learner and family. So different cultures have different roles for their learner and families. Asian cultures are very different from Americans who are, have been their whole lives. So if you start looking at cultural relations, you may get some really good researchers to cite your beliefs on the learner and the family. So why are we doing this? This philosophy, like I said, is going to be kind of like an audition for you to know the institutions that are going to line up with what you believe, and then if you are a good fit for them. This is reflective practice. We need to stop and think about why are we doing this. We need to think about all these little things to reflect so we can get back to the core of why we want to be teachers. Um, and this is going to help potential employers. We don't want to be a square peg in a round hole. We don't want to be dissatisfied in our work environment. And we want to have a sense of self-care. And to do that, we have to make sure that we are working somewhere that aligns with it. Now, obviously, people have to work. So you may be somewhere for a year or two that doesn't perfectly align, and nothing ever will perfectly align. But it may not be your end game, and it's good to know that going into it, that it's not a good fit for you. So where would we actually use this document? So I included a little snippet. This is my CV. I actually have a statement of my teaching philosophy in my CV. It's adapted from something somewhere to this. It constantly evolves and grows. When you are submitting a resume as a teacher, it's really positive to have this available and on hand because a lot of people are going to ask you in an interview, what is your philosophy of teaching? What's your philosophy in education? They're going to ask these same questions that we're asking you to do in those job interviews. LinkedIn is another place. I have an abbreviated form of my philosophy on LinkedIn, and it grows and it evolves with me. You're going to be asked for it. Sometimes you're asked to submit it with an application paper. That's not uncommon in this world. And then in interviews, you're going to be asked a lot of questions about this. So reflecting throughout this assignment is going to better prepare you for opportunities down the road. So here are a few reminders. Please make sure you're following your APA guidelines. We do have a 7th edition. There are resources through the library for you to work on improving your APA. We want to follow the yellow brick road, or what I call the rubric brick road. So just like we tell our students to look at the rubric and use it as a checklist, you want to do the same thing in this course. Look at that rubric, use it as a checklist, make sure that your final draft you're submitting to me has all the requirements that it needs. And then last, communicate. We need to be open and communicate with one another. Idea sharing is a great way to reflect and to grow as an educator. So the discussion forums are going to be very full and very busy as we sort of try to pick apart, well, I like what you said there in your philosophy. Maybe I can adapt it to what I think. And we learn about different theorists and articles that we might be drawn to as well to form our own ideas.